Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rich Jones. I'm the CEO of Favor Greenville and a co-founder here at Youturn. Today we're joined by Hamilton Baiden, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his story, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Hamilton, no right or wrong way to do this. Just sort of, I'm not going to read your bio. Just jump in there, share with the audience, just real quick so you know who you're talking to. We got a lot of folks that are in recovery. We got people who are trying to learn about recovery, healthcare systems, treatment providers. So you can start wherever you like.
All right. So I've been in recovery for about 8.5 years. Actually, June 25th is my sobriety date. And healthcare executive. I've been in healthcare now for about 27 years. It was a very interesting journey to get here, though. So I had a lot of fun in my life. Some of it probably caused a lot of issues, but I'm very happy where I am today.
So if you do the math on that, 8 years or 8 or 9 years in recovery and what was it, 27 years working in the field?
Yep.
So that's 18 years of not in recovery.
That's right.
One of the ideas that we want to get to here at Youturn is trying to break through some of the stigma. Talk a little bit about your experience when you were in active addiction, working. Did people know? Did people not know? What was it like?
Actually, that's a great question. So actually, the best way to answer that is when I decided to go get help, I called Human Resources and said, hey, look, I think I've got an issue I got to go address. And she said, no problem, we'll support you. And she goes, you need to call the president. So I called the president of the company. I told him. And he goes, what are you talking about? He goes, are you talking about hyperactivity? And I go, no, I'm talking about drinking. And he goes, well, you're a lot like me. And I said, well, then maybe you should go too, my friend. So
what was your position at the time?
I was basically the executive vice president of sales and marketing of a huge specialty pharmacy corporation. And, people thought I was the life of the party. Hamilton liked to drink. It was kind of funny. He was hungover sometimes. I don't think anybody thought it affected my work, although it did. After I got sober, I realized that it did. The other interesting thing is I had a bunch of friends that said, oh, you're not really an alcoholic.
Yeah.
You just like to party. You're fine. And honestly, that was the adage that I had for many, many years.
Right.
And that's the excuse I told my wife all the time is, what's the big deal? I'm a good father. I'm a good husband. I like to drink. I get screwed up every now and then, but it's not a big deal. And that's really what I try to sell
So does
myself on.
was it more on the family end where people started to say stuff than as opposed to the work end?
It was 100% a family end.
Okay.
I went out one night I went out one day and played golf and just got completely trashed. Fell asleep in the back of the car. My wife was calling me. She thought I had died. Got home. We went out that night. I continued to drink. And the next morning I woke up and she goes, look, I love you, but I'm not in love with you anymore. I'm done.
Yeah.
And I said, no. I'll quit, which we all know that was a lie.
Right.
And I actually called a really good buddy of mine who's a friend of yours and said, did you like where you went to rehab? And he goes, you need help, don't you? And he goes, look, at the end of the day, you got to get on a plane and you got to go now or you'll never go. And that's exactly what I did. Now, if my wife had woken up that morning and said, hey, babe, I love you, here's 4 Advil, there's no chance in hell I would have gone through. Zero.
Right.
No chance.
So had you thought about rehab before that at all, or was this something had you ever knocked it around at all?
So I did go to IOP, intense outpatient, where I went like 3 nights a week and did the classes. But here's the funny story. It was a 45-day program or 42-day program. And I said to myself, I'm not going to drink during this program.
Yeah.
I was supposed to graduate on a Wednesday, and we were supposed to go to New York that night. And I knew that I was going to drink in New York. So I moved the date of the trip to New York till Thursday so I could make it through those 42 days. And then I went to New York and had 2 glasses of wine. So I went into that trying to figure out how to drink like a normal person.
Right.
And I did it for maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and then it just creeped up, and it got worse and worse and worse.
So what finally happens though that it winds up sticking?
So it's very simple with me. So everybody talks about how you have this, or a lot of people talk about how you have this moment of clarity.
Yeah.
So I went to rehab in the mountains of North Carolina. And in that rehab, we had meetings every night. And so I got there on a Wednesday and I was pissed because I had been like, I checked myself in and I'm like, what the hell am I doing? That next night we were sitting in an AA meeting and I shared and I said, look, if we opened a bottle of wine, I could have 2 drinks and I could stop, which was probably kind of a lie, but I felt like that. And the next guy sharing, we had our big books open. The next guy sharing, he goes, you know what, Hamilton? He goes, I'm the exact same way. This difference is if I was in a bar, I would want to drink the entire bar. And I don't know what happened. It was literally like a bolt of lightning, hit me right between the head. And just like that, I go, I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah, so you're getting information along the way. It's kind of what we believe is happening is all that stuff is adding up. It's accumulating. It's sort of a change process. It's not a change event. It feels like that conversation with that guy flips the script. But honestly, like you're probably thinking about this and learning more about it. Did you have it? Were you in any other counseling or anything?
I saw a counselor every week. I saw a psychiatrist once a month. I was on anti-anxiety medication. I was on antidepressants, all that stuff. And my counselor used to say to me all the time, "Are you ready? Are you ready?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not ready." But what that moment did to me is it made me realize I didn't drink like a normal person.
Yeah.
And as soon as I realized that, something just clicked and said, if you don't drink like a normal person, then why are you drinking at all?
Right. So when you went to the counselor, were you honest with the counselor?
Nobody's ever honest with
Were you
counselor,
semi
right?
like something was up?
She knew I drank too much.
Okay,
yes.
she knew that.
Yeah.
All right.
She knew I drank too much. She probably didn't know how much, but she knew I drank too much. She suggested many times. She knew I went to IOP. But you can't make someone get it.
No,
you just can't.
No.
And I didn't get it. I mean, I would go to AA meetings and I got in a lot of trouble in AA meetings because I would, you say I'm rich, I'm an alcoholic, and I would say I'm Hamilton and I don't know what I am.
Yeah.
And I had a couple of these AA dudes that was.
What are you doing, man? You got to admit it. Yeah.
Screaming at me that I was an idiot and people die but I was honest. I didn't know what I was.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
That's helpful. That's helpful.
Yeah.
In my opinion. So you go through this, you go to rehab, you come out, and what do you do then? Like, how do you maintain it? What was your experience then?
Well, I had a very crazy experience. So when my wife made the decision that she was done, she was done. There was no coming back in her mind. So I went to rehab hoping I was repairing my marriage. And I mean, there was a night in rehab that I almost left because all I wanted to do was to get home and fix everything.
Yeah.
It's what we always do, right? So when I came home, she never came to the family program. I came home thinking, all right, I'm fixed. Everything's going to be okay. Well, it wasn't. And she was pissed and she was angry. And, you've been doing yoga for 12 or 6 weeks and I've been here taking care of the kids. And so we just went, it was a knockdown, drag out 4 months. And then at that point, my counselor was saying, why are you staying? Why are you staying?
Yeah.
Because she was just, and no fault of her own, she was pissed.
Yeah.
And she beat me up. And so finally, after 4 months, I looked her in the eye and I said, I'm done. I said, I've done my work. And if you're not going to accept me, then I'm going to leave. And so I left. I was gone for 5 weeks.
Did you drink or anything during that period?
No.
Like, okay.
I partied. I went out and partied and had fun and went to bars and did all that stuff, but I didn't drink, not once. And that was interesting because I used that almost as a tool. I said, you know what? If you're not going to support me, you probably think I'm going to fail. Not a chance in hell will I fail.
Oh, wow.
I was not going to let her win.
Were there any times where it was difficult? Like when you look back on that period of time, did you ever come close?
No, because I'm one of those guys when I commit to something, and especially when I have anger in my brain to help me commit to it, like I was never going to let her win by drinking. So it was really, I mean, everybody uses tools differently. For me, I'm very competitive, and I'm like, I'm not going to give you the power.
So you're like, F this, I'm going to show you.
That's exactly right.
And I'm going to do my life, and I can
exactly
go wherever
right.
I want to go and
That's
do whatever.
Exactly right.
And it really didn't bother you.
No.
So that's interesting if we can camp out here for a minute, because that's one of those things that if you were to go to a meeting or you to go to a therapist and say, hey, I'm going to these bars, they would say, don't do that. You're definitely going to drink. So I think it speaks to this idea, to your point, that it is a different experience for everybody.
Well, that's what I've learned in life as I've gone through this journey, and especially when you talk about recovery. The thing that irritates me about the business of recovery is it's black and white.
Yeah.
It's either you're in recovery and you don't drink, or you drink and you're not in recovery, or you use drugs or this. And to me, every single situation is 100% different. I mean, how many people do you know that go to rehab after drinking for 25 years like a lunatic, go to rehab and never touch another drop of alcohol after one trip to rehab? I mean, it's very rare.
It is very rare, yeah.
and goes to bars and does all that stuff and doesn't drink. So I think that's the most important thing for me is everyone is different and we should treat it as such.
Were you going to meetings or anything at that period of time?
I did go to meetings when I came home. I did have a sponsor, although he was more like a marriage counselor. I mean, every time I got in a fight with my wife, I would call him.
I can't believe this is happening.
Can't believe this is happening. And he was phenomenal for me. And I went to meetings for a long time. But the amazing thing was I was in New York and I called my wife. I'd seen a picture of her out somewhere and I called her and she was like, what do you want basically? And I said, I just have a question for you. And she goes, what is it? And I said, all I want to know is why the F you did not give me the help that I needed when I came home. And it was amazing. It like turned a spigot on and she just was apologetic and basically realized in that 5 weeks that she needed to look at herself. It wasn't just me.
Yeah.
And I literally flew back from New York, moved back into the house. Were
you living in New York at that time?
No, I just there visiting.
Okay.
But I had already got another apartment.
Yeah.
I mean, I delivered divorce papers.
Yeah.
And when I came home from that trip, from that phone call, I moved back in. We got back together, tore up the divorce papers. We're still married. Never been happier. Never been more in love. But it took that journey.
But your wife hadn't been part of the family program, right? So it goes this idea of the families being educated, and you just feel like something happened to click that.
Well,
what
happened?
Comment.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Is me being gone for 5 weeks and realizing how much that she missed me and missed our life, and then just coming to terms with the fact is, wait a minute, Hamilton got better. I didn't do any work. And now I need to do work on myself. And she did. She went to Al-Anon. She went to a couple of open AA meetings with me. She started embracing it. And yeah, it totally changed our life. But I would not change one, as painful as that was, I would not change one.
No, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
So you go through that experience and as time goes by, does your recovery kind of change? Talk about how does it progress?
Yeah. What was interesting for me is as a healthcare executive, I made great money. As an active alcoholic, I was horrible with money. I had a house that was too expensive that I couldn't afford. I drove cars that I couldn't afford. I lived outside my means. I never addressed anything. When I got sober, and this is interesting, people always think, oh, I get sober, everything turns great. Well, no, I had to deal with all that stuff.
Right.
At that point, I was finally in my right mind to actually deal with it.
Okay.
And so I dealt with that. We sold our house. We had a $1.2 million house that I ended up making $11,000 on. Didn't have to short sale it. So that was great. And I just addressed all the issues that I had never addressed. And it was, believe it or not, it was actually fun addressing them.
Yeah.
It was painful. Like, I don't want people to think you get sober and there's no pain. But I really was in my right mind to be able to do that. And we moved into a smaller house and I bought I was an executive making a lot of money and was driving a 2005 Jetta that I bought for $5,000.
Right.
So my family could drive nice cars. I did everything I was supposed to be doing that I didn't do for 25 years.
Did you go back to the same company that you were in before you went? What was that experience like, going back to work, and was it did it change anything for you? Was work easier, harder?
All right, so there's two parts of that. So when I first came back to work, I had a very hard time engaging. And that's because of my problems in my marriage.
Yeah.
So it was very painful. It was hard. I couldn't focus. I made it through, but I wasn't good.
Right.
Once my wife and I got things patched up and I got my head screwed up back on straight, I became better than I'd ever been. I mean, I was focused. I didn't have migraines and not show up for work.
Right. Migraines.
And I was able to really focus. And I was a sales guy, and I always kind of led by just intuition and motivation. And I became very data driven. Everything in my life got better when I got sober.
Was it harder to do sales or anything? Because you'll hear people talk a lot about, like, the sale is kind of driven by an experience of drinking with people, kind of partying a little bit. Was that an issue at all?
So, Rich, what I did, and I don't know if it would work for everyone, I embraced my alcoholism like I embrace everything in my life. Like, I'm one of the most competitive people in the world. I can tell a great story. I always said I've never failed at anything in my life. That was not true. It was the drinking I failed at. And I wear being an alcoholic as a badge of honor. I think it's one of the greatest things that ever happened to me, because I think I have a very special brain because of it. I think most of us do. And so I embraced it. I talk about it. I've now kind of made it part of my life in a business sense.
Yeah.
And so I just...
So you were never anonymous even early on? I mean, you weren't like out there saying, hey, I'm Hamilton, I'm an alcoholic, look at me. But if people wanted to know...
Yeah, I actually, I was probably more like the first.
Really?
I really did.
Okay.
I met people, and to this day, I meet people, and probably in the first 10 to 15 minutes, you know that I'm a recovered alcoholic.
Yeah,
Because
I've heard you say it. Like, you say it real early. Yep.
I mean, and what's interesting about that is I really am proud of it. I really mean that. I wouldn't be proud of it if I was still active, but I'm proud of it because it's the greatest. My wife gets really pissed at me because I say, there's nothing in my life, not having kids, not being married, that ever, because anybody can get married, anybody can have kids. I never thought it would be possible for me not to drink.
No, I can relate to that, yeah.
Never. So the fact that I, whether you want to call it overcame with it or I live with this disease or whatever it is, it's the greatest thing I've ever done. And so I tell people I'm proud of it. The second thing it does is it holds me accountable.
Yeah, good point.
If I drink this afternoon, I would have to call you.
People
I would have
know
to call,
what's up.
I would tell, I'd probably have to tell 12,000 people because I've told 12,000 people.
What about your family? Like even beyond your wife, your mom, your dad, your sister, like how did they feel about you being open about that? Sometimes families will be like, keep that stuff quiet.
Yeah, I think they kind of feel the same way. I mean, I'll tell you the greatest story. So I have a 17-year-old, I have 3 daughters. The baby is 17. And one of the proudest moments of my life is I took her to her first party. 20 minutes in, she calls me and says, come pick me up.
Oh,
so
wow.
I went and picked her up. I said, what's up? And she said, I'm miserable. She goes, all these people are drinking and I have no desire. I don't want to. It's
Wow.
not me.
Yeah.
And she goes to parties now, and the first thing she says when she walks in, it says, if you guys want me here, I don't drink.
Okay.
And it's
That's
phenomenal.
fantastic.
It's phenomenal.
That is fantastic. So in that case, like her education around it or her awareness around it.
Yep.
Why do you think, like, do you have a take on why some people are different about that? Do you feel like it's just conditioned? Because you were wide open about it. That's...
Yeah, well, I mean, I've had buddies that, I remember I had a really good friend. He ended up working for me. His wife had called my wife, and then I got a hold of him, and the only thing he was concerned about is the stigma.
Okay.
He's like, I don't want to be one of those guys that don't drink.
Right.
I don't want people to know. And I mean, and to this day, he doesn't tell people. And that's his prerogative. If that keeps him sober, that keeps him sober.
Yeah,
But my sneaking suspicion, he's not sober.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, I just don't think he is.
But whenever he goes out, he didn't want he didn't want to have to be the guy who was saying, like, I don't drink. He was
right.
self-conscious with that.
Exactly, 100%. And I guess I get it. I mean, for whatever reason, I mean, you've told me about the USA Today article that, 50% of people now think, alcoholism is an addiction, and that means 50% don't.
Right.
So they look at you differently.
They look at you different, or at least at the very least, you think they're going to look at you different. Yep. And I can relate to all of the above. What's happening in your life now? I know that you're in charge of a company, you're president of a company. Talk about your take on alcohol, substance use in the workplace, that kind of thing.
Well, it's changed a lot. So I'm president of a company, an integrated healthcare company out of Dallas. Life is interesting because we have developed a program for substance misuse and suicide. And my take has changed a lot because of some relationships I've developed. I used to be all about abstinence, and I think it's the greatest thing in the world. And I still 100% believe that's the greatest thing. But what I've learned is, as I've started really studying this and getting into this, is only 10% of people get help. I'm sure you've talked about that. And I never knew that. And so if only 10% are getting help, why is that? Well, you touched on one, stigma's one, but what's the other one? Well, it's abstinence.
Yep.
I mean, how do you cure substance misuse? Well, it's pretty damn easy. You just don't drink anymore.
Just quit, man.
Yeah, just quit. Obviously, talking to 2 people that have been through this, it's not really that easy. And so when I started thinking about that, I'm like, there has to be a better way to get those 90% of people that are never going to raise their hand and ask for help. So we've developed a program, and I really believe that there are people out there. Not everybody has to go to rehab.
Right.
Not everybody has to take medication-assisted therapy to get off opiates. Not everybody has to do cognitive behavioral therapy and AA meetings. There are people with the right help and with the right interaction with people that can get better just through that.
Oh, absolutely. And it's statistically proven.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question about that. But you're in touch with the impact of substance use in the workplace. I mean, even if you think back about your other company, lost productivity, those type of things.
And then if you ever just, for anybody that's listening that still drinks, go grab a bottle of wine and sit down at night and Google addiction and COVID.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's unbelievable. Some of the statistics I've heard, I just heard that 30% of teenage kids have actively thought about suicide.
Yeah.
And as a father to a 17-year-old, it scares the hell out of me. And then there was a recent study, I think it was a study that said 49% of American workers these days are struggling with drugs and alcohol. It's astounding.
And it's escalating. And I think part of the problem is we're still waiting for folks to kind of hit bottom and come see us.
It's ridiculous.
Versus trying to do something a little bit more aggressive.
It pisses me off more than anything in the world. Because here's the deal. Imagine that I went to a dermatologist and I had a mole on my arm. I live in Scottsdale. I like to play golf. So let's say I go to a dermatologist and I have a mole and the doctor says, Hamilton, I'm sorry to inform you have melanoma. You have cancer. And I can take this off in about 10 minutes doing something called Mohs surgery. I'll take it off. You'll be in remission. But you know what? I don't think you've hit bottom yet. I think once I do that, you're going to go right back to the golf course and not wear sunscreen. Right. So we're going to wait. And then when it turns into stage 4 cancer, we'll treat you with chemo. Like, dude, everybody and their brother would fire the doctor, report him to the medical board, everything. But that's what we do with people that struggle with drugs and alcohol.
Absolutely. Or we're not going to give you your insulin because you're not, following your diet, or we're not, you're not doing your exercise.
It's unbelievable. Kind of thing.
It is really, really staggering when you think about it that way. And the stigma, just the approach, the business model, everything points toward that willing person. This is where Heritage Cares is trying to make an impact.
Yep.
Can we get in there earlier? Can we do some things? Have you had any successes early on, or you have anything that you would share related to that? Any examples of?
Yeah,
I know you and I worked together on that one case.
I think the world is turning. I think people are open to a different way of looking at this. I've been on so many meetings or calls with people, and people start crying in the middle of things because they have a brother or they have a cousin or their parents, and people are more willing to talk about it. For whatever reason, that the attitude is starting to change. Investment companies are pouring tons of money into this space, but what they're touching on. Every new company that's coming to this space is touching on the people that raise their hands and ask for help. I really think that we are the only ones that are touching on the 90%. We're trying to give people a safe place to start the journey. So we're having great successes. And
it's not a matter of Heritage Cares versus rehab or Heritage Cares versus outpatient. Actually, we enhance all that.
Yep.
But somebody's got to get to these folks. Get them engaged. Keep them engaged. You can't get help if you don't go get help. So it's like a bridge.
That's what I would say. The way I describe it is this: is Heritage Cares with Youturn is starting the journey for some people. It's giving people this safe place to start this journey, and then that knows that need additional care, we can help them. Some of those people we're going to be able to help on our own. Maybe we catch them earlier. Maybe they get into the system earlier. We start talking to them. Behavior modification, harm reduction. But there are people that do need, like me, 9 years ago, I needed inpatient rehab.
Absolutely.
We're going to help those individuals get there and hold them accountable to make them go.
Yeah, and help them on the back end.
That's exactly
right. Keep
the
person moving forward. How about with your recovery today? How do you get it done today? How do you keep your head above water today?
Well, one of the things is now what I do for a living is I talk about it every 5 minutes of my day.
Yeah.
So I think when you personally believe in something and you've lived it, I think it brings credibility to it. I mean, I know you do that in your life. I'm able to say, look, I lived this life. I went the traditional path of recovery. I always wonder if Heritage Cares had been available 20 years ago, if I don't want to say I would have thrown away, 10 years of my life, but would those 10 years of my life have been different? How much more could I have accomplished if I had started the journey earlier?
Oh, I think about that all the time. If someone would have been talking about it, or I'd have been able to look up information confidentially without any fear of consequences, I can't help but think it would have got me to recovery earlier.
Yep. Well, I had a call with a lady the other day. She's actually our PR person, and she goes, I lost my brother to heroin 8 years ago. And she goes, I guarantee if you had told him 9 years ago, you don't have to stop using heroin, just talk to me, he would have talked to you.
Yeah.
Now, maybe you wouldn't have changed him, but at least he would have started the journey. And that's all you can hope for.
Well, and you talk to a lot of different companies, a lot of different folks. In your experience, most people, is that like most people they can relate to the substance use issue. They say things like that. My brother, my uncle, my aunt.
I would say 99.9% of the people and there's only one that I know of, and I can tell that story if you want me to. 99.9% of the companies or people I've talked to have said this is phenomenal and we need to be doing something like this because they can relate. Now, I won't tell who it was, but it was the head of benefits for a company that you would know, huge company.
Yeah.
Very well known, very prestigious. And he looked at me and he goes, your program is one of the greatest programs I've ever heard. He goes, but luckily at our company, we don't have an issue with addiction.
Yeah.
And I was just like, dude, what do you say to that?
That's collective denial, right? Yes. That's fantastic.
I said, congratulations, you solved the issue. That's great.
Yeah, well, good job, dude.
His theory is that industry is regulated by testing. And he goes, so we test everybody. And so if I had been smart, what I would have said to him is, so I guess if we just make drugs illegal in this country, then everybody.
We test everybody so we don't have any problems. Yeah. Right.
So that was the only one that you got to walk away. The guy doesn't get it.
Yeah, it's certain folks you just kind of.
That's right.
We're not going to bother with this.
He's not going to get it. He doesn't want to get it, and that's okay.
How do you feel about just overall the corporate environment? And I know you guys also do work in the government. Do you think people are? You said earlier that you feel like the world is moving a little bit toward a different approach. You feel like it's been received pretty well?
Oh my God. So here's the way I look at it. I would separate the public sector, so state, local government. They know there's a problem. They just don't know how to fix it. I mean, what have we thrown $300 billion at the problem in the VA for suicide and substance misuse? And the numbers every year, it's 22 vets die by suicide every day. It's horrible. 80% have a substance use disorder. They know they have a problem. They need a new solution. In the commercial sector, a year ago, I would have said they don't know they have a problem. There's a lot of bad stuff that COVID's done. The only good thing it's done is people have started to open their eyes. You can't deny it. I mean,
every other article is something about mental health, something about substance use disorder.
You have an alcohol-related death in the company. You have a suicide in the company. It's your healthcare costs are going up. People show up to Zoom meetings doing inappropriate stuff and CNN dude and drinking, and it's insane how bad it is.
Yeah, you can't ignore it. You can't. You can try to. That statistic you cited earlier, around 30% suicidal ideation, stuff like that is going to catch people's attention.
Yeah,
it absolutely is.
It's so the attitude over the last year. People are open. People are willing. We were on a call the other day with a company, a huge paper manufacturer company, and they started the meeting by saying, look, we've been told that we can spend no money this year on anything extra. It's a great start to the meeting. We said, okay, no problem. Let us tell you about what we do. At the end of the meeting, they wanted to do a pilot.
Right.
It's because you can't. I was on another call with the healthcare executive, and he goes, I feel like if I don't do something with this information, that I'm not living my best life.
Oh, wow.
He felt so strongly about what we're doing. He goes, I can't just let this sit. I have to do something with it.
Yeah. So, and people, it goes back to the idea that they're moved, that they're personally moved.
Yep.
Do you, in those calls, do you share your story? Do you talk about your own recovery?
Yeah. Always. And the way that I do it, there's a reason I do it, is because I talk about, as I go through the statistics and how the world has changed and how bad this problem is, I always touch on the fact is, look, I'm in recovery, and so I thought I knew everything. I thought I was the smartest person in the room. I had no idea that only 10% of people get help. Right. I was blown away by that number. And the other one that I was blown away with, there was a recent Gallup poll that said 18% of American workers are going home to addiction.
Yeah, going home to an active user.
Oh my God. Yeah. I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And so we've started saying, in every company there's a Mary. She's 50 years old. She's an accountant. She's never done an illegal drug in her life. She likes her wine, so she has 3 glasses a week. Does Mary have an issue? No, Mary has no issue.
No, and I think if you dig into, just so the audience understands what we're talking about with that, there's a survey that's done by the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration. They simply just survey Americans. They try to identify how many people meet criteria for substance use disorder. It's about 22 million people each year. And of those folks, only about 10% will get any kind of help. It's not even professional help. That includes, did you go to a meeting, or did you talk to your clergy, or whatever it might be. And when you talk to the other 90% and you ask them why they didn't get help, that's even more interesting. It's not because I couldn't find help or I couldn't access help. It's because I didn't quite think I needed help.
Right.
So it goes back to this thing called denial.
Yep.
Heritage Cares is focused on I don't want to say breaking through that denial, but forming relationships that will help get a person through that.
Yeah, it's I always say it's just trying to put one foot in front of the other and learning and getting educated through Youturn, and then once they do that and they become curious enough, then we take them from there.
In a certain percentage, I mean, you just got to look at the numbers. A certain percentage of that 90% will start to make different decisions.
Well, think about it. When I was in active addiction, I guarantee you, I know for a fact, at least 4 or 5 times, I woke up so hungover that I thought I was going to die and Googled, how do I drink in moderation?
Right.
Or I'm struggling with alcohol. And then what pops up? 700 rehabs trying to get me to come.
Yep.
I have no idea how good they are. There's just no place out there until now where you can go to a safe place where stigma's not involved. My employer's not going to find out about it, where I can get real information, real advice, real hope. And that's Youturn, which leads us to where we are today.
So we have a lot of folks who have listened to the podcast, watched some of our episodes. They understand rehabs, they understand recovery houses. Can you talk a little bit more specifically about CARES?
Yeah.
What are the components? What happens if a person is involved?
Yeah, so Heritage CARES is a 3-part program. Typically what I do is I go through, our work with the VA and corrections led us to realize there was a big problem, and that the work we've been doing in this for a long time is not working. It works on a certain percentage of the people, but it's not a holistic view of how this should work. So then we looked at the general population, and we all know it's a big problem. And then we go through the fact that only 10% get help. And so what we've done is, first of all, Youturn is the first part of Heritage CARES. It always starts with Youturn. So Youturn, as you well know, is the engine that you put into an employer or you put into an organization. It's a safe place for people to go to start to learn, to get hope, to get advice.
The gears turning.
Just starting to get the gears turning, whether it's for themselves or, I find the bag of weed in my kid's car and I'm freaking out. What do I do? So I go to Youturn. What we've done is, once you're on Youturn, all you have to do is be curious. You don't have to admit you have a problem. You don't have to do anything other than click a button, and it leads you to what we've created. It's called a care management platform. We're the only ones that have created it. And it's basically simply a tool to connect people to need it to additional care. So there's 2 groups that'll come to that care management platform. It's either a family member that has a loved one that's struggling, or it's an individual that's curious. So the family member, long story short, we immediately connect them to one of our family peer coaches. These are people that have a lived experience in this life. They're completely trained in stress reduction, coping skills, behavior modification, the whole gamut. If it's an individual, this is where it gets interesting. The individual, we want them to take a self-assessment. They can either take it literally by themselves on the computer, or they can take it with one of our clinicians on the phone. This is the very interesting part, Rich. So we've always believed that we were going to help with suicide, but it was really a side effect.
Yeah.
We were helping with substance misuse. We know how entwined they are. We wanted to take it a step further. So we partnered with a lady named Kelly Posner. Kelly created the Columbia University Assessment and Protocol for Suicide. It's really the gold standard in evaluating risk with suicide. And so when you go to that assessment, the very first thing is a wellness check. Individuals start to answer questions through artificial learning and algorithms.
And this is real important for people to understand, because I've checked this out.
Yep.
Like, it's not an overwhelming assessment.
It's
It's
like
just,
6 questions.
6 questions.
And if you're non-suicidal, it's 3 questions.
Right.
So they answer the questions. If they're non-suicidal or low risk, we allow them to continue with the platform. But if they are high risk or medium risk, everything shuts down.
Yeah.
Like, we do not give a about drugs and alcohol anymore. We have a person in crisis, and all we care about is saving that person's life. So,
well, and I think it's important, Hamilton, if you're out there, that's a big deal, because I've been part of a couple of those. I mean, it's like that. Like, everything does stop and the phone call starts, and we've got at least 2 or 3 of those.
Yep.
So that suicide screen, validated, research-driven, Columbia University, trying to catch those folks.
Yep, and literally within 20 seconds, that person receives a crisis intervention call from one of our team. And like you said, we've been a part of a few of them, and 0 I've done in my career comes close to the fact that you save a person's life. 0. So that's the suicide portion. If the individual continues through that program, we walk them through a drug and alcohol assessment known as ESPERT. And to your point, That entire assessment is 3.5 minutes.
Yeah, that's real important for people to understand. We're not getting people on and doing this like
No.
17-page clinical assessment.
No.
You're answering all these personal questions. It's literally designed to catch people through this quick screening process.
That's right. That's right. And basically, long story short, once we get the results, the individuals that need it move over into what we call peer coaching. Now, I personally hate the term peer coaching.
Yeah.
I've told you that. And the reason is because it's overused and you don't know what you're getting. It's
Right.
used in cancer. It's used in everything. We've created a model. Actually, you've created a model that we've partnered on called
Right.
assertive community engagement. And so the audience knows this is really important stuff. Assertive community engagement is 2 parts. So the first part is very simple. We've talked about it. There's this theory in the world of addiction. It's called hitting rock bottom, and it's the biggest crock of you know what. It makes me. I know it makes you angry. The fact that we would wait for people. You can't treat dead people, so why
Right.
are we waiting? And so our philosophy is very simple. We meet people wherever they are in this journey. It's not about drugs and alcohol. It's not about quitting. It's simply about evaluating your life, and you say it better than I do. The way you are today, and do you want to make a change no matter how small it is? I mean, you've even told me. Our coaches will talk to people 5 times. We don't even bring up the word alcohol. They
Right.
typically bring it up.
Yep.
You got more experience with that than I do.
No, but I think it's important because I can sit up here and talk about it all day.
Yep.
You, as a company, Heritage Health Solutions has decided that this is a worthwhile pursuit.
Oh my God.
And it's not like, because Heritage Health Solutions technically could get involved in the game in a lot of different ways. You could
Yep.
build a rehab, for
Yep.
goodness sakes, or you could build outpatient clinics.
Yep.
But this is, you guys have strategically said this is a worthwhile investment.
I've never come across a product or service in my 27 years of healthcare that even comes close.
Yeah.
Because it's amazing you asked me in the beginning, what have I learned? Like, if you talk to people with respect, if you don't call them alcoholics and addicts, if you talk to them like a human being and say, dude, you're struggling, let's talk about it. Most people actually want to change. Most people will tell you, hey, I'm struggling with alcohol. Like, you don't even have to bring it up.
And they want the best for themselves and their
Right.
family, and they're not on this hell bent for self-destruction.
Yep.
We believe it's a disease, it's a disorder, and you can start the conversation.
That's exactly right. And look, a lot of these people may end up like me. Maybe they need to go to inpatient rehab. And that's what's amazing. That's the second part of assertive community engagement. We believe that there's a lot of people we'll be able to help on our own through
Right.
stress reduction, harm reduction, behavior modification, all those, teaching them coping skills, all that. But there are going to be people that just need more. They need a clinician. They need inpatient rehab, IOP, whatever it is. We've created this special sauce of how we talk to people, when we text them, when we call them, that gets people engaged and gets them to that treatment and gets them to actually do it.
Yeah, so if you're sitting out there and you're listening to this in your treatment center, and you're like, what are these crazy guys talking about? We're actually going to fill your treatment centers. Because
Your EAP that no one uses,
Yeah.
that like 0.5% utilization uses, and you're paying $250 per employee per month, that literally no one uses, we're going to make them use it.
Yeah, people are going to use it because we're going to start talking about it.
That's
and,
right.
and as you said earlier, Youturn kind of warms the process up, and then you got the screening, and then you got the coach. It's
Yep,
fantastic.
That's exactly right.
And you feel like you're getting good momentum with that.
It's
early, but you're getting good
It's
momentum.
early, but it's better than we could ever expect it. And I will tell you the most fascinating thing about this. We always talk about the platform is confidential because we want to get around the stigma. What's amazing, though, is when a company invests in this and launches it, stigma immediately in the company starts to go
Yeah.
down. Because the employees go, well, wait a minute, my company's buying this, they're giving it to me. Wait a minute, this is a safe place to talk about drugs and alcohol. And I tell every human resources director, CFO, CEO, I go, when you do this, you just better be ready, because your door, people are going to knock on it, and they're going to come up and they're going to hug you and
Yeah.
they're going to thank you.
Yeah.
Like, it happens in every company we've ever sold.
Well, and I think Heritage Cares better be ready, because this is the wave of the future. This is how we should have been doing it for 70 years. It's better late than never.
Yep.
But it really is tragic the way we handle it. And first of all, I'm proud to know you and proud to be part of this process. And I think Heritage Cares is on to something with this.
Yeah, I agree, man. We're
Definitely,
excited. We're
definitely.
excited.
So if somebody's out there listening and they want to learn more about it, what's the best way to either get in touch with you or learn more about Heritage Cares in general?
Yeah, so they can go to heritagehealthsolutions.com. They can learn all about it. We are going to be launching a direct-to-consumer site where people can go if they just need help. I mean, our model really, You know, Shay Hauser, who's your friend and my friend, I heard him say a couple of years ago when you guys were first thinking about starting Youturn, he goes, I really believe that employers can change the face of addiction. And I agree with that.
But there's also going to be a direct to consumer.
Yeah.
Like, so if you're out there and you're listening and you keep your eye on Heritage Health, you'll be able to sign up.
Absolutely.
Or sign up for your family member or whatever that may be.
Absolutely. I mean, ultimately, I'll tell you what my dream is. My dream is every single person in this country that goes to the pharmacy to get a script of Percocet gets a subscription to Heritage Health.
Stuff like that.
Stuff like that.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg. But we've got to get to a point where people have the tools that they need when they start taking these medications.
No, it normalizes the conversation. Make it just be part of the health and wellness kind of vibe. Don't make it this dark, mysterious kind of go-to. You got to go off to rehab. Of course, people will need rehab. That's not what we're saying, but make it just more part of the fabric.
Well, and the more you see people, I mean, that's why on Youturn you put the stories. The more that you see normal people, like, or cool people, like, I don't think I'm cool, but like people like us that are in recovery, that it's just not a big deal. It's part of life and we're excited about it. And I mean, I'm not out there I'm not an AA thumper or anything.
But it is kind of wild to think about, though, dude. Like, think about it before you went to rehab and stuff. Like, being on a sales call and talking about I'm in recovery. That does blow your mind a little bit.
It totally blows my mind because I thought everybody that went to AA was a bunch of idiots.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, I went to AA meetings. I'm like, these people are losers, dude.
Yeah.
I want nothing to do with
And
them.
I'm never gonna say anything about this. Yeah.
Nope. And now I go to AA meeting. I'm like, wow, these are all people.
These are my
like,
people.
these are
And
people
then
like me.
then you and I have been on calls together, and it's just like this is what it is. I'm in recovery. You're in recovery, and it's kind of
and I think the more people that embrace it that way, I think people just like it's not a big deal.
Right.
It's a gift. I mean, my brain works the way that it does because of my dopamine deficiency, and guess what? It makes me an awesome person. And at the same point, I don't drink.
That's right.
So,
well, thank you for what you do.
all right, buddy.
And thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
Guys, we will see
Good
you
to see
later. You turn, you learn, you turn, and we'll see you soon.